There's the key thing. Get this meeting recorded. We will distribute all the recording materials. We also do have a couple handouts from a couple of our panelists. So we will be sure to distribute those. No need to ask if you get them. Everybody gets them. So with that, I would like to turn over to our main topic. We want to hear about the do's and don'ts of responding to the open RFQ or IFB. So kind of a hot topic, lots of rules and nuances around that. So panel, please do turn your cameras on and your microphones on. I would like to introduce the moderator. Beautiful. Good to see everyone. Good morning. I'll introduce the moderator, Dallas Hammett, Senior Business Line Leader for WSP USA. Dallas, if you'd like to introduce your panel and take it away. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Rebecca, and welcome, everyone. We have a great panel from business owners to on the contracting side and a public owner. We'll start with Brandy Barr. She's the owner of Barr Marketing. We also have with us Candy Kowalski. She's the procurement manager for the city of Phoenix. And rounding out the panel, we have Stevie Votter, an estimating administrator with Fan Contracting. So look forward to the conversation. And as Rebecca said, if you have questions, put them out there, because I bet your questions are better than the ones we came up with. So that would be great to go through. But we'll get us started. And as procurements, they don't just materialize out of thin air most of the time. They usually get in through a CIP or a program. But and I'm going to start with Candy. For the city, what happens in that time once it's in the CIP, but before it comes out to an active procurement? What's going on in that middle of the time there?
Sure. So good morning, everyone. So I'm going to speak on behalf of design and construction procurement. That's my area of expertise. So when a project is put into the CIP, a budget has been established for that project. When the department is ready to move forward with that project, they will submit what's called a request for services to my design and construction procurement team. If it's not streets, water, or aviation, they will get assigned a co-project manager from our vertical project management team. And that VPM will assist the client department throughout the life of the project. So once the VPM is assigned, that project will then be assigned a contract specialist. And then the contract specialist will then set up a meeting with the project manager or project managers and ensure that all parties understand the scope of the project and that it has the appropriate budget. And from there, the contract specialist will review the project schedule with the project managers and prepare the call for qualifications and the request for qualifications. And then we'll ensure that we have the appropriate panel. So we have the appropriate people on the selection panel, and we'll contact firms for either a technical registrant or a contractor to participate, depending on the type of procurement that we're advertising. So once all of that has been completed, the contract specialist will submit a request to the city clerk's department to advertise the project. So the following week, so typically on our Thursdays, we're going to advertise in the Arizona Business Gazette. Then our group puts out a weekly design and construction procurement newsletter of all upcoming procurements for that week. So it'll be posted there. And then we also publish all of our projects on the city solicitations webpage. So that's for any procurements that require a statement of qualifications submittal. And the process is pretty much the same for any IFB, other than we don't have a panel because obviously it's a low bid packet that's submitted rather than a statement of qualifications. But there's a lot of behind the scenes work and interaction with the client department project managers before we actually advertise.
A follow-up real quick, Kenny. Well, on those professional services, are any of them, is there a get ready notification on the website? This one's coming out in the next 3 months, or is it only once you have the full advertisement?
So we have people from our group attend the monthly ACEC meetings. Often there's information shared at like the APWA organization meeting as well. So we try to get information out that way. But otherwise, it's primarily our newsletter, and it is a very short window because the newsletter goes out on Monday and then the advertisement happens on Thursday. But the CIP is posted. It's basically a 5-year process. So the 5-year CIP is posted on the City of Phoenix main webpage, and that can always be reviewed. It's not a guaranteed that the projects that are posted in the CIP are going to happen or happen in maybe the fiscal year that they're identified. But that's pretty much the norm. And so they can always reach out to anyone interested in one of those projects can reach out to my team or potentially reach out to that department to get information about the project in advance, which is always a good idea.
Thank you. Now, Brandy and Stevie, your teams are looking for that work. You're out there following it. So, Brandy, I'll start with you. What are you doing during that time it got on the CIP before it goes to that advertisement?
So in my prior life with the design firms that I had worked with, we would actually look at the CIPs or ADOT STIP every single year when a new version is published. We would identify projects that we thought that we were well qualified for or were adjacent or extensions of our current projects. But then, as Candy mentioned, through that process, we would also then go and meet with different contacts at the city, whether we're working on current projects with PMs and start validating, do they think they're going to come out? Is that an on-call project that will just go to a firm, so we'll take it off of our list? Things like that to really see what's really going to happen, and the timing of those things. But then also we even start looking for some of our teaming partners. If the project is very large, we'll look for other partners, even if they provide the same services. So if you do roadway design and let's say it's 3 or 4 miles of roadway, it's easy to divide up the 2 or a bridge firm, things like that. But then if there are key sub-consultants, let's say there's a major geotechnical issue or things like that, we may be looking to lock in some of those team members early. And I know we'll talk about how you get on those teams later on, but it's really good if you're also doing the same thing for your company, not just if you're a prime, if you're a sub to help get prepared.
Thank you. So Stevie, on the construction side, how are you guys getting ready before that advertisement or procurement is known to everyone?
Yeah, our process is similar to what Brandy goes through. We're checking the CIPs, we're watching forecasting, we're looking for 5-year plans that ADOT might put out. And then we're getting it on our watch list and we monitor the project. Any information that comes out, we'll do whatever research we can ahead of time. And then, yeah, we're looking for, do we need strategic partnerships? How does that fit into scheduling? Where would materials come from for paving jobs, for example? So we're trying to line out as much information about that job ahead of time and get any team members on board if it's something that we're going to partner with another contractor on.
Sounds good. Didn't sound like anyone said they weren't doing anything until they saw the advertisement. There's homework to do before then. All right. But sometimes there are quick projects that come out that aren't in the CIP. Stevie, I'll let you keep going. How does your firm, how does FAN deal with that? That if something pops up right away, but it's really inviting, fits your skill set. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, we jump right on determining the scope of work. And so we have a scoping list that has a bunch of our subcontractors that do each of those different activities. And the first thing we want to do is get the bid documents out to those folks. So we do a scoping meeting to decide what all we're going to need, what partners we're going to need, and we try to get that out as soon as possible on these emergency jobs. There's been a lot coming out lately with ADOT. So yeah, it's very reactive on those ones. We're trying to get stuff done right away.
So is it safe to say it's great to have a relationship with that prime so they know who to go to if they need some immediate help?
Absolutely.
Brandy, how about you on those that come out that shorter notice that aren't in the CIP? How do you guys deal with those? Or how did you, and now how do you do it as the business owner?
So those are our favorite. Totally tongue in cheek right there. But I would say from both of my hats perspectives is we really evaluate a go, no go on those things. So we'll look at the project. We definitely dive into who we think's going to chase it. We will look at who's done the existing study or who's done the existing design. Seeing, I mean, we all kind of know our community is very small, like how things are going. So the worst thing, and in my professional opinion, that you can do is not put in a good proposal to an agency. So what that means is even if it's a quick turnaround or you had years or months ahead of time, is you still have to put in the same level of effort. You still have to go through the issues. You still have to, you know, have innovative ideas that save time or money. And so when those come out, it's really taking a step back and saying, do we really have the resources to do this? Something that's quality, that the panel is not, and I hate to be so blunt, but the panel's not going to waste their time reading because we didn't put forth the effort. Or if we don't have that effort, I know the city of Phoenix, you can sit on a panel, you can do it in Tempe. Is there a better way for us to get involved that provides more value to the agency? So we're looking at all of those different things. Those are some things I even recommend to my own clients. No is not a bad word. I know people think marketers always say no, but it's making sure what you're doing is really your best foot forward. So it doesn't matter, like I said, whether you spent 6 months tracking and writing before it comes out, or you're going to do a quick turnaround. You really have to put the level of effort, same level of effort into it. So for me, that's really one of the determining factors.
And that goes right into our next question. And you mentioned go, no go. You mean you don't just go after every job that comes out there? It's free in your office. It doesn't cost you anything to go after a job, right? I'm joking.
Oh, it
There's a
does.
lot of time and
And
money put into that.
and
Yeah.
I would say, and I'm sure Stevie will agree, we track how much we spend on each of these jobs. So let's say hypothetically it costs $5,000 to do a SOQ, and I'm saying SOQ, not even a project specific. Let's say it's a city agency SOQ, it costs $5,000. One of the questions that I always ask people is this the best value for the company of this $5,000? Is there something better you could be doing? And usually that's when wheels start turning or things like that start happening. And it's like, oh, well, yes, there probably is. Okay. So once you start looking at the financials of things, and I mean, even the bigger ADOT proposals, now that you're on our side, Dallas, you're seeing they can cost $30,000 to $50,000, you know, depending on how much labor and things like that that's put into it. So, and I don't know, Stevie, if you have from the construction side.
Yeah, we're very aware of how much money and time goes into putting together our proposals. So they are selected strategically, that it's, you know, we have a very good advantage, or we have something really important that we can bring to the table. We're not going to just submit on ones because we can, for sure.
So Candy, I'm going to change it up a little bit on your side. What are that for a group that didn't do all that homework? What's some things that immediately disqualify some groups if they weren't prepared and they didn't do everything, or say they did a lot of work but they didn't do a certain thing? When are people kicked out of that solicitation?
So submittals are done electronically for the SOQs. So as long as they submit to the correct project and on the time before the time it's due, there's really very little that will disqualify a firm. We used to disqualify for certain information that was in the SOQs. Now, like if we give a page count in the request for qualifications, and if a firm goes over that maximum page count, we just remove the pages from the SOQ for the panel to review. So that's a big disappointment for the firm if that happens, because that's where a lot of the really important information is, and the panel isn't going to have that information to evaluate the firm fairly across the other firms that submit. So they're not disqualified, but in a way they're removed from the process because that information is no longer available. So that's really the big one, is just making sure that people are reading the request for qualifications, that they're following it in the order they're submitting, and providing all the responses that are asked for so that they can be evaluated well on their actual qualifications.
And on the construction side, is there any areas that you have noticed that there's been areas where someone was either disqualified or that created different challenges if they didn't provide certain information?
So for something like our JOCs, CMARS design build, we have a requirement that they submit a bonding capacity statement. So that is critical. If that isn't submitted with their SOQ, that is a disqualifier. So what I said regarding basically on the previous question, that still applies to the construction, but on a design bid build, then we have a whole different set of requirements and documents that are due at the time of bid. Bids are due specifically at 2 o'clock in the Dropbox. There's no exceptions. So if documents aren't submitted at time of bid, that's an immediate disqualifier. So if we don't get a surety bond, if there's certain forms that were due that weren't submitted, and from the owner side, I would say we are very much aware as well of the investment, the financial and the time investment to put a proposal together. So the last thing we want to do is to have to disqualify a firm. I'm always very sad when that has to happen, because it's also not unfortunate for the company that took the time. It's also unfortunate for the department that needs those services that no longer has that firm to even review.
Thank you. And follow up, I'm going to put on my old hat at ADOT, a little different. If you go over that page count, as you talked about, that could be, and in most cases would be a area of disqualification. So that is something a little different between the two agencies, procurement. And I think it's real critical because every agency is going to have different rules. So make yourself very familiar with the agency's rules. Don't assume because one group did it one way, that's how the next group's going to do it. We have lots of cities and the county and ADOT in this area that our folks will bid on, and everyone has a little bit different in our rules. So I'm going to change it up a little bit. Sometimes we, as firms, go after a project by ourselves, but most of the time we have a team. And if you're not the prime, how do you get on that team? So I'm going to start with Stevie first. You know, how does FAN look for team members when you get in, and how do I go out and get on FAN's team?
Yeah, we really like the marketing and the events that we've been going to. We're meeting a lot of new people, and that face-to-face interaction really helps build the team, build the relationship, and we come back from those events and we share the information that we get with the rest of our guys, with our estimators and our project managers. And so we're helping to bridge that gap between our project management and estimating team and the rest of the team members that we can bring on. So that's something that's really important to us. And just as a note, I know people spend a lot of money maybe on their marketing emails that kind of just get blasted out. But if you haven't made personal one-on-one connections with us, it's really hard for us to want to put you on our team if we don't have any sort of relationship. So my advice with sending like just the blanket marketing style emails would be to reach out to us directly. Call us and let us know you're sending something. Call us and let us know you're interested first. That way we're putting, a name or something to this email that's coming through, and it makes it a lot more personable and a lot easier to get into the team, I guess. And then be responsive is another thing. When we're reaching out to people or we have questions and stuff, it's frustrating for the team if a sub has said that they're interested and then we don't hear anything back from them. So, and it is completely okay, like Brandy said, to say no if it doesn't fit your scope and we've reached out to you. Just a simple like, hey, we're not going to be able to bid on this one, or we're not interested, this doesn't fit our scope of work, is way better than like radio silence in our world. So reaching out, communicating often is good for us. And be persistent. The guys in my office are super busy. A lot of them are estimators and project managers, so they're running jobs and bidding work. So catching them in the office might be difficult, but there's others in the office that can help take calls. We can help pass on information. Just be persistent with your questions.
And I'm assuming a lot of those, especially those face-to-face contacts, need to be before the advertisement, because there's a little bit of work going on during that advertisement.
Yes, yep, that's correct.
Now, Brandy, what's your advice for getting on that great team?
I agree with everything Stevie said. Same mentality. The only add-on that I would have to that is make sure you know your capabilities and your strengths that you bring to that project. So if you, let's say, worked on the preliminary or early stages of that project, like, it's okay. Don't be humble. Tell people, well, hey, we can help your team because we did the drainage study for this project. Make sure that that's known. And then when you're talking to people face to face, I mean, everyone always hears, what's your elevator pitch? That's your pitch. If you can provide that type of value, people will add you to their teams. The other thing too is be working and trying to find out ahead of time about those projects. Because if you can go to a fan or a TY Lin or Aztec or anybody like that and say, hey, did you know ABC project is coming out in 3 months? That helps you even more get in the door with these primes.
So reading that CIP or program ahead of time and actually helping that prime do the homework can help you get on the team.
Yes.
Can I add in something from the city side?
Yes, please.
So we strongly recommend that when projects advertise, on pretty much everything we do, we either have a pre-bid or pre-submittal meeting. We strongly recommend that all firms, primes and subs attend those and use those opportunities to network and to potentially have partnerships through those meetings, because there's a lot of firms are interested in niches like aviation or niches like water. And sometimes the only way to get that experience is to be a sub. So then you have that opportunity to build up some experience. So then you have that next time you want to submit on an SOQ, and that eventually typically will lead to you being able to be a prime on a project.
And I'm going to throw a Kirk, because this wasn't on any of our prep questions, but does the city have any pre-qualifications for type of work for contractors?
On our side for design and construction, we do not do pre-qualification. So for construction, it's primarily you need to have the proper license, technical registrant on the professional services side. Those are really our prime. And then the experience that's needed for the scope of work we're asking for.
Okay.
Well, in Dallas, I have one more thing. I have one
please.
more. And sorry, it just clicked in my head. But when you want to be on a team repetitively, whether it's this project and their next project, it goes to what Stevie mentioned is the responsiveness. So when their marketing person or when their PM sends you an RFI, follow the RFI. Don't go rogue and think they need more than what they're asking. It's usually they send you one listing that says, I need X, Y, and Z in this format. If you follow those formats and you're hitting those deadlines, even though I will be compassionate and say primes don't always give you the longest turnaround time for those, is if you can do those, the marketing people will then become your advocates with the project managers because you're responsive, you're, following the direction. So you will also then find an inside advocate to, well, we should put this company on our team because we know they'll get their stuff done for the submittals. So if they'll do it on the proposal side, they will deliver on the project side. So I just wanted to add that one more tidbit.
Thank you. we talked a little bit about selection panels. Not every job has a panel, but many of them do. And Candy, I'm going to start with you. You mentioned a little bit, but I think it's worth repeating. When does the city require or generally have a panel? And then who's on those panels? And if I wanted to be on a panel, do I have an opportunity to do that?
So any of our projects that require a statement of qualifications will have a panel. So they're typically made up of 5 to 7 people. If it's for professional services, we'll have a technical registrant, could be inside, outside the city. On the construction side, we'll also have a technical registrant, and then per Title 34, we'll have a senior member of management from a construction firm. And then it's usually made up of the project manager, and then it could be other technical experts that are going to be involved in the projects. It could be end users. It could be stakeholders in the project. So it really just depends on what the project is and what it's going to impact or who it's going to impact, how that panel is made up. So the project manager will pick the majority of the panel that they submit to us when they submit their request for service. And then we provide, as Brandy mentioned, we provide selection panel training once a quarter. So off that list of both consultants and contractors, we then contact firms who look like they will have an understanding of the scope of work, but hopefully are not submitting on the project so that we can use them on the panel. As I mentioned, once a quarter, we do the training. So 4 times a year. We do put that information in our design and construction newsletter that goes out every week. And it's also available in the handout that will be provided later. There's a link to that. So if somebody wants to, it's open to anybody. So anybody can sit on our panel training class to understand how the process works, get that background perspective, really see what goes into our process in selecting a firm. However, we do have some limitations as to who can be on the panel. So somebody who is a marketing person could attend, but they're not going to be somebody we would utilize on the panel itself. So, and if somebody wants to be on the panel and would like to attend the training, then they need to contact Daniel Valady. And can I give his email and phone at this time?
You bet.
Okay. It's Daniel, DANIEL VALLADEE at phoenix.gov, or you can give him a call at 602-534-3286, and he'll get you signed up, and then we'll send out the invite when we do. I believe the next one will be the first Wednesday in November.
And having sat on panels before, there are processes that panel members follow, but until you go through that training or sit on a panel, that might be a mysterious black box of people that they're working in. So would you encourage people to go through the training just so they know what to expect as they prepare their submittals for an SOQ?
Absolutely. We've gotten really good feedback. We've been doing this for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now. So we've received a lot of good feedback, and we are always looking for people to participate on panels. So the more that attend, the better. Like I said, it's open to anybody, whether you actually end up on a panel or you just want to see how the process runs.
So Brandy, what's your experience with panels? Have you gone through the training? Or you know someone who has ever sat on a panel for a public owner?
So I myself have not gone through the training, but I will say I have encouraged several people at my last firm. And I'll even give you a personal inside story. So my husband is an engineer. If you guys know him, James Barr, and he has gone through the training and participated on different panels with different agencies across Phoenix. And usually he sits on it's CMAR or something like that, and he, behind the scenes, like husband-wife conversation is he learns a lot about the process and learns a lot about things that you don't normally may think about on the design or construction side, but hearing the owners talk about what's important to them that you're only going to find out if you talk to the different departments. You know, maybe utilities had an insight. And so kind of hearing the different perspective, where on the design side, we may only be thinking about, you know, what are the issues to solve this drainage flooding, what are these things, but yet it could be more important that this community needs strong public involvement, you know, that city doesn't want people calling them constantly. That was the priority. So just hearing the different perspective of how projects are looked at has been the most value for him who has sat on a panel.
And Stevie, I know your owner has sat on panels. Have you heard any feedback, or what's your experience with a panel, or how that process works?
Well, I gotta say, between Candy and Brandy, I need to sign up for that training. So I think that sounds really great. Would give some cool insight on my side of things. But yeah, our owners have sat on panels. One of the main things that they communicate with us afterwards is that they notice an outlier or a differentiator, what sets one contractor above the next, you know, so they're looking for those things when they're going through the proposals, and they want to see who's really standing out, who did their homework, who did their due diligence, who knows the most about the project. And so we try to take that on our end and make sure that we are that contractor. You know, we do the most research, we've looked into the project, we're coming up with value engineering ideas before selection time. So we've used their insight in that way. And then, you know, Mike has always told me that a lot of times there are contractors who are neck and neck. And so you really have to go back through and you're finding, how do you pick one over the other when both are very equally qualified, have all the experience, have everything that you're looking for, but how are you going to score one higher than the other? And so, you know, he said before, sometimes it comes down to how well are they presenting? How well are they, you know, how well are they doing in the community? How well are they on paper? You know, and sometimes it's looking for errors. Where did they mess up? You know, where did they mess up that the other contractor didn't? So part of our process is really making sure, like, we check every box for every single requirement, and we don't miss responding to a part of a question if it's a two-part. So we really do that double check, making sure that everything's done.
And I think you brought up a great point, because on panels that I've been on and heard, there's great proposals, and the difference between 1, 2, 3, and so on are generally very small margins. And it's not that someone did a bad job when they didn't win. Someone did that one little thing extra. So if you're a sub that can bring that one little thing to tip a prime over, that gives that whole team an advantage. So think about that one little thing that will tip them over as you're preparing for those. I know we have one more question, but Rebecca, do we have some questions in the Q&A? And I'll see if I can do it.
So I put a couple questions over in the chat for you, Dallas. I can't put them in the Q&A myself, but I do have a couple ones over there. So you're welcome to touch them if you'd like, or you're welcome to kind of move through your last planned question.
Let's see if I can find it. We have some time, so I would like to get to them. I see one here. How often do you kick out submissions? And that one's to Candy.
So fortunately, it's very rare. Typically everybody does what they're supposed to. As you said, y'all work very hard to put those proposals together and want to do everything you can to make sure it gets reviewed. So it's very few and far between we ever have to disqualify.
And I can tell you at ADOT, and Candy brought that up earlier, the public owners know the work that goes into those, and they work to do as much as they can to keep the all submittals in. You know, there are times where you can't, but they want the most competition. They want people out there, so they do work to keep that in. One
Well,
more
in
for you.
Dallas, wait,
Yes, please.
well, in Dallas, sorry to interrupt you, is I can't stress enough, this is why you don't print and bind if it's a hard copy the day it's due. Like, make sure you're doing it the day before, because the things or times I've seen companies or heard about companies getting disqualified, it has been because they were rushing at the very last second, sometimes midnight or 2 a.m. The night before it's due, and you put in one extra page on a resume, and you didn't have time to do a flip through, or you sent it to a printer and somehow a random page, even a blank page, ends up in there, or whatever it may be. So make sure at the end, when you're getting to the finish line, like, take your time, go through compliance and check things. Like, you don't have to fill up every single page for your proposal to win. So just, kind of go through those things. So then that way you can avoid yourself that happening. But I will say, I make it sound like sunshine and applesauce to everyone at the very end. I will say I have, and this will be another conference conversation sometime, but I've had my own embarrassing, struggling moments through these. And yeah, it's not good. And then you're ending up waiting by the phone for the next week to see if Candy's going to call you or somebody's going to call you and tell you that you made a boo-boo. So avoid that stress as much as you can.
And in this day of electronic submittals, it's owners will do it, but it's very easy to put that time where it's due, and it will not be submitted if you're beyond that time. Another one for you, Candy. I proposed on this project. I didn't win. I'd like to know what happened, why I didn't win. What does a debrief look like at the City of Phoenix on a, say, a professional service RFQ?
So it depends on when the debrief is requested. If it's prior to us going to council for award, we can provide your company only comments and scores. So we're happy to do that immediately. We're aware that you want the information, want to be able to submit on the next project while you're waiting on whatever our process is to complete. So we're happy to do that. Once it's gone to council, then we can provide full information. The city has really pushed for public records requests. So that is also in our newsletter now on how to do that. There's a link takes you right to the page. So we pretty much ask for a public records request on anything, and that at that point we can provide SOQs and the complete scoring and comments. So, and I always recommend, even if you are the winning firm, to ask for that debrief, because you want to know what the panel really liked. And it's very difficult. Now, if you're focusing primarily on one department, you might get a better feel for what the project managers are looking for. But if you're across different disciplines, every panel is different, so you never know what that makeup is going to be and what somebody's looking for. So like Brandis said, just targeting what the RFQ is looking for, making sure you're spending time to really do that research. And we have some PMs that give some really good feedback, so we're happy to give it.
Good deal. And I'm assuming Brandy and Stevie, your firms go and look at those, take advantage of those opportunities.
100%.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, 100%. And then even, I mean, I know ADOT allows you, like, they'll post the winning proposals so you can look at them. And as Candy said, once you get all of the real debrief notes and you start looking through, I mean, there are times it is splitting hairs, but you can see, oh, well, they had a really good schedule savings here. And not only did they have a good idea, they represented it very well. So it was easy for the reviewer to understand what they were saying. So there's a lot of different methods to doing those things that you see in your debrief from the comments, but when you look at the winning ones and you compare it to your own as well, That helps you a lot see where the trends are going to.
Yeah, really quick, we always want a debrief, whether it's win or lose. And then we have an internal debrief meeting as well. And we keep those notes, we keep all that feedback for the next time around so that, you know, if it was a suggestion on something we can do better, we are sure that we incorporate it in the next round, because we all are looking to constantly get better and make better proposals and win more work. So we're always looking through that feedback, even from historical feedback on jobs years ago. We're always looking for that.
See another question here in the chat. Trends in public procurements that we can share. And I'm not sure if that's leading towards type of projects, design bid build versus CMAR versus design build, if that's where they're going to. But Candy, can you, I know that the city works with multiple procurement types, but is there any trends that you're seeing, or do you see more qualification-based selection for construction jobs, or do you see the meat of it still going to be the IFB for construction?
So for the city of Phoenix, we do a lot of statement of qualifications on the construction side. Now, if there's federal funding, we primarily have to bid those out. So there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, that's just the parameters we have to work in. As far as any other, so predominantly we have very heavy JOC work. So always good for the construction side to get experience in that, because as Brandy mentioned too earlier with our CIP, you might see projects in the CIP, but they may not necessarily go out for advertisement. They may be completed through a job order contract or on the professional services side, be done through that on-call.
Okay. One of the things that I saw yesterday that came out is ADOT's putting out at least a request for information on a progressive design build. It's for truck parking, so it's a fairly small project, but that would be the first for them. So again, it's not a it's a request for information, but if you're interested in something like that, that's something to look at. It was sent out to I got it from our business development team yesterday, but it's out there, and that will be kind of the first of its kind that ADOT has done. I know City of Flagstaff's done that in the past, and maybe some others. Let's see if there's any other questions before we go to the last one.
Hey, Dallas, you do have one in the chat, and then two have come up in the Q&A as well.
All right. Go ahead and read the Q&A, and I'll look for the one in the chat.
Okay. So the one in the chat is pretty close to the bottom. And then I'll do the first one from the Q&A. Is there a preferred file naming nomenclature? So in terms of file naming, do you have a preferred nomenclature, file naming convention?
So that's a good question. We do not, however, I know that there's been a lot of challenges with the city's e-procurement RFX system. And when we have our pre-submittals, we do let people know to not put like and signs or periods or hyphens, things like that, and to really not make the file name long, because that seems to trip up the system for some reason. So how you label it is really up to you, but the simpler, the better. The good news is that we are looking at moving away from that system, hopefully sometime early to mid next year. So I'm super excited about that. So hopefully that headache will go away when that new system comes on board.
So Candy, does the city require references to be provided? And if so, how are they scored?
So on our statement of qualifications procurements, we do require references. We ask for up to 3. So there's 1,000 points that are on the solicitation, whether it's split through the interviews or just on the SOQ. But when the SOQs are due, we ask for up to 3 references. Those are worth 7 points apiece. So they do impact the scoring. I think somebody mentioned earlier, there could be a few points between the firms because there are multiple good proposals and it's just that tight. If a firm does not get maybe that 3rd reference, they're going to lose out on those points and they're going to lose the project to the other firm who got the 3. So also during the pre-submittal, I think my team's pretty good at letting people know you can call the contract specialist who's working on that particular procurement and confirm that we have received your references. Because if we haven't, obviously you want to follow up with whoever didn't submit for you. So you do get credit for all of those. So they don't take away from points in the RFQ, but you could lose those additional 21 points potentially.
Rebecca, is there one more question in the chat?
Yes, we do have a question. This one I have heard before as well. So it looks like it's coming to Candy as well. So as a prime submittal, I'm assuming, how does the city view past performance of key personnel in lieu of company performance? So the company hasn't been around for 5 years, but the person's experience goes well beyond 5 years. So yeah, the question is specifically, how does the city view past performance of key personnel in lieu of company performance?
So our RFQs actually have 2 separate sections, and one is specifically for key personnel experience and one is for the firm experience. So we understand that individuals may move from one company to another throughout their career. So we're really looking for work that was done by the firm under the firm's experience. And then there's experience that may be associated with an individual that was somewhere else in their career, and that's where that experience is placed under the key personnel. That's how we differentiate the 2.
Great. And I don't know that ADOT does that. So I think that's something that it's different in there, and it sounds like a great way of doing it. So let's wrap this up. I'm going to ask each of you to give your top 2 or 3 do's and don'ts as you're responding to an RFQ or an IFB. And Brandy, I think I'll start with you. What's your top 2 or 3 do's and then things you just absolutely do not do?
Okay, so my top 3 do's. So my first one would be follow the RFQ, RFP by letter of the law. And make sure you check the evaluation criteria, because sometimes the RFP may say one thing, but the evaluation criteria may say another thing. You still need to address both areas. So follow the request by letter of the law, like check mark in order. Even if you personally don't think it makes sense, you still got to do it. The other thing would be my second do would be, it's okay to think of your content in an easiest way to communicate it. So what I mean by that is traditionally people will like to write paragraph, paragraph, paragraph. Well, let's say you have a City of Phoenix proposal that's 6 pages long. Okay, we're not going to fit everything. So go ahead and think ahead of time at the RFP question and think, okay, they asked for us to identify the risks, the challenges, and the solutions. Okay, that sounds like a table, and I think it's easier for you and the panelists to respond in a table. So think ahead of time before you start writing, before you start doing those things of what's the simplest way to communicate the information. And then number 3 is, and it should have been number 1, is do your homework. Do your homework on the project, do your homework on the client, and do your homework on the competitors. And when I say competitors, it's not just your specific competitors. Think about if you're a sub going for a prime, their competitors, and what differentiators that you can offer to them. My top 3 don'ts would be, okay, I don't like to be negative. It is, I'll make it positive but negative. My top 3 don't is make sure you run spell check. So how's that? Make sure you run spell check. Number 2 is make sure when you're sending information to different companies that you're editing that information. And for example, you're not sending Brandy Bar Stevie's information or Candy's information, and it still says it's their information. QA, QC, all of your work. So take the opposites of my don'ts. And then my last don't would be waiting till the last minute. Don't do that. Because whether it's doing your homework, I will guarantee you somebody else is at the same time you should be. And then don't wait till the last minute. I know people don't like blank pieces of paper to write on. That's okay. Not everybody is that person, but don't wait till the last minute to do your write-ups, because then you don't have quality reviews. So those are mine. And sorry to kind of twist them to be positive negatives.
Phoebe, how about yours?
Brandy, I did the same thing. So my number 1 would be, don't be afraid to ask questions. Please get clarification. Please don't make assumptions. If you're not sure, please ask. It is so much easier to ask ahead of time than to realize after the fact, and then we're in a bad position. Number 2, be prepared to respond to questions that are coming from a prime, and it's going to be a lot of times very quick, and they're going to need responses very quickly because there's a mountain of information that we're all pulling in at the same time to put into these proposals. So just be prepared to answer those questions quickly. And then number 3, I can't stress it enough, and this is a little bit on the hard bid side as well, but please bid according to the bid schedule. There are so many times, and it's the number 1 frustration from my estimator who's been here 45 years, is that we'll get a quote in and they are not referencing the bid schedule items. And so please reference your bid schedule. And same on the RFP side, please follow the outline, follow the questions exactly what they're asking for, like Brandy said.
Your don'ts?
I mean, I kind of wrapped my don't into the don't.
So just the opposite of those
Don't
things.
be afraid
Okay,
to ask questions. Yeah.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Okay, Candy, you get the last word on this one.
All right. Well, from the owner's perspective, it's pretty similar. Reading the RFQ and responding in the order that the items are addressed, making sure that you spend time to research that project. In the RFQ, the project understanding and approach is the highest point section, and that's really where you want to target and spend the time and show that you've done your research and where you stand out from your competitor. And then even asking for debriefs when you win that project. So those would be my do's, and my don'ts. So same. Don't wait until the last minute to submit your proposal or your bid. As mentioned, that system shuts off at 12 o'clock, so there's not even a possibility to submit that SOQ afternoon. And we have people watching that Dropbox. So at 2 o'clock, it's done. Don't talk to city staff about that active procurement other than to that contract specialist, because that is potential for an immediate disqualification. So we get a lot of questions on that to clarify. So if there's other projects you're working on with city staff, obviously you can continue to talk about those. You can talk about something that isn't an active procurement, but as soon as that particular procurement comes out, you cannot be talking to anybody but the contract specialist. So and number 3, my don't is hopefully more positive of don't forget we're partners with you in helping you get under contract and have a successful project.
Awesome. So I need to follow the RFP, be concise, do my homework, ask questions, follow the bid schedule, ask for debriefs, don't send in submittals with misspelled words, make sure I do my QA/QC. Don't talk once it's been advertised except to the authorized people, and ask questions. I want to thank the panel. Great information. And Rebecca, I'm going to turn it back to you.
I was just going to say the same thing. Dallas, fantastic job moderating. Candy, Stevie, Brandy, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your insights. As event organizers, we do have a couple handouts. So one from Candy that has helpful resources from the city's perspective, and I believe it has selection panel information in there. And then Stevie did provide a list of bid resources as well in PDF format. So we will be sure to distribute those. One last plug as we close out our meeting, we are ending early. So thank you so much for attending. We will send out the link to the recording to every registered attendee. And then also Merritt has been great at dropping resources into the chat as well from DBE Supportive Services. Be sure to check out the DBE conference. Registration is free. So that's kind of exciting. That's really cool. Excuse me. And all the other resources that Merritt has dropped into the chat, be sure to check those out. Thank you again so much, panelists, for sharing your insights and your expertise. Dallas, fantastic job moderating as always. Great to see everyone, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.